Good evening, this is Chairman McCoo calling to order the meeting of the Willington School Building Committee of September 20th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. We'll go to present to speak first. Online, is there anyone present to speak? We have nobody in the room. Chairperson's report, I have just a very brief report. We still do not have a recording secretary. I am committed to the fact that if we don't come up with one, we're one of 4 committees in town now that doesn't have a secretary. If we don't come up with one, I will find the time somehow to get the minutes done. If anyone else wants to help with that, that would be great too. Wants to pick a meeting and, watch the video and create a set of minutes, that would be great.
We just picked one up for the Board of Ed and she turned minutes around in a day. She might be willing to help us out. I don't know if she'd do it long term.
Well, I'm
I
not
can
so sure
offer
we
to
have a long term.
Well, I don't know if she wants to jump onto another board is what I'm saying, adding in there, but
Yeah.
if you wanna send me the dates of the minutes that we're missing,
Okay.
I can say, hey, if you wanna watch the videos for these, is it the same rate that BOE pays? It's
Yeah, they're all the same.
$100 per meeting or whatever it is.
I don't know, it's set upstairs, but I think it was an hourly rate and it was somehow the amount of hours for the meeting. And then again, that same amount of hours to the minutes plus more if you needed it because it was complicated or
Yeah.
attachments or
So
whatever.
send me the dates and I'll let her know how many it is and see if she's.
Even if she wants to do some of them
Yeah.
and let us know which ones they are, that's a few less we have to do.
I think board finance should put a search for with a stipulated meetings on record for all. Looking for,
Okay.
we're in the same.
Okay. Right. Okay, then the other thing is, obviously, our big thing is, wrestling with this report. I know there was concern about some of the language towards the end of the report, which we talked about at the last meeting. I'm sure people have noticed that that language hasn't changed much. I wrestle with it because I do understand the concerns about it, but I also feel that we do have to somehow address what we went through in this process, how the process went, what we learned in this process, because we are essentially creating a record that probably another committee is gonna be looking at in a few years or in 10 years, and the institutional memory may not be available. So the report is gonna be our living document that says what we did, what we learned, and hopefully gives some guidance or help to the future committee or future decision makers. So I just wanted to point out that I realize that that is maybe not a resolved item, but that's what we're here for, to talk as a group and try to resolve. And then, I guess, well, I'll leave the rest for the meeting. So that's it for chairperson report. Any question on that before we move on? All right, communications, nothing. Okay. Subcommittee reports, I think communications is the only subcommittee we have active right now, right?
Yeah, we have met.
Okay.
I did have an idea today as I was reading over the report. When we're all finished with the report, could we put it in the Willington Wire as a link or something? So that any townspeople that were interested in seeing the summary would have the opportunity to do so. We could put a little, Phil, what do you do?
I would just email it directly to those 500 people that have signed up for the Willington Wire. It's not a big group,
Okay, okay.
and then put the report online.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
Otherwise, they'd have to read the Willington Wire, find the link. I'd rather just push it straight to them.
right, you
if
could do
they
it
allow
both
us to do it.
ways. So if someone's reading the
Right, they just
Willington
have
Wire and they get to
link.
that, they can
Right.
just click right.
so this is the reason we're hanging on to communications a little longer.
I think it's important that
To
we get,
decide how we disseminate the information at the end.
Yeah.
Um,
do you agree, Phil, as my partner
Oh,
in
yeah.
communications? Okay, okay.
I think there should be a link on the town website. Not
Yeah.
the
Yeah, agreed.
school website.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, then let's move on to old business, draft final report. Again, I apologize for getting out late. So people haven't had a lot of time to digest it yet. The version you got today, was great work done by Phil to clean it up. It is not drastically different language wise, right, from the report that went out yesterday. It's just moved around, formatted, cleaned up. He just hadn't had time to do it before yesterday. And so I asked him to send out what was done yesterday, so he had a little more time to look at it. And then he had time to do more formatting, for today. So that's why you got 2 versions in 2 days.
I did try and clean up some of the language in the recommendation section, that was really.
Yeah, and I have not even had a chance to get that
We're
yet.
gonna,
So,
we got another version today, I didn't catch that.
yeah, it's the, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I can put on screen too.
Do we have, yeah, if you want, do I need to say it to share or? you want to say it?
So I can just tell you from yesterday the changes, we moved some things around order wise, so I'm gonna make you dizzy real quick, but sorry, the background information stayed the same. History facilities stayed the same, the information gathered stayed the same. The ed spec section stayed the same. We moved something, whatever there was a recommendation for last time where we were gonna move ed specs, I think it was.
Yeah.
We moved it, the enrollment study actual graphic is now an appendix.
That was really good.
It just made, some of the items I felt like needed to stay because of the text, you needed the text to understand it. And some of the items like the enrollment study, just put it at the end.
I really like that you can click on the enrollment study rather than having to go back to the appendix and find it.
Yeah, I mean, long term in 15 years, that link might not work, but it just knowing that it's there.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, it was an appendix.
We're covered both
In
ways.
15
okay.
years, someone's gonna say link, what's
Right,
that?
right.
Why is it, why is
Artificial
it
intelligence stuff.
They're just gonna say it and it's gonna show up in a minute.
It'll be AI.
And so like the state construction grant section stayed the same, and I felt like that graphic was one that. You needed to have that there for understanding connected to the text, otherwise
I
people were gonna
agree.
be scrolling back and forth,
Yeah,
so I left that. The identified projects, I just cleaned up some of the formatting, but then what I did was instead of. Having all of the options and then the designs, I put the design underneath the option. I thought that made a little more sense,
I
so
agree.
option 1A, there's the Collier's design, there's the QA&M design. And then did the same thing with the option 2 and 2A. So a little bit of format there. The QA&M design was there. I made the public engagements, these graphics just a little bit smaller because I thought they were really big and taking up multiple pages. I did take out the graphic for the site selection. This stayed here, but then the actual graphic with all the sites went to an appendix. So that's in there. I believe you said you wanted to leave the blatant statement about the Youngerman property. This is actually a new statement right here. Deemed inappropriate as a new school site is documented in the 1992 school building report. This school building committee agreed the Youngerman property was not an appropriate site for a new school as well. So, and then the language was directly there. I left the site matrix here. This is one where there's no explanation. Maybe we want to make an explanation for that. Because it's not really in this section, if you know what I mean.
yeah, I did, that was one of the things that, everything to this point to me flows a lot better now. And then when I got here, I was still thinking about, okay, how do.
So like easily, we could just do a site selection. Matrix, just explain something like that. So that goes into this.
Yeah, just a short.
Yeah, just a couple, yeah,
Right.
exactly.
When
And
I,
it should basically say that this was derived down, narrowed down from the one that's in the appendix.
Correct.
is this, when I read it, I wondered, are these the last 4 options? Before we made the decision, is that why there's four of
These,
them,
this is what was narrowed
Public
down to be the top four.
top four, okay. Is that explained? I didn't,
And there's no
That was
explanation,
no-
that's what I'm saying.
okay, yeah.
I'm just making notes on the document, so. In the estimated cost savings and the estimated capital improvement project cost, those graphics were in every slideshow we had. I felt like that was one where we said, why do we have this in here? I just put the dollar amount. So where you see this 532,000 and the 18 million, those are the dollar amounts that are in those slides. Shorten the documents a little bit. We said we were gonna take out this project cost summary graphic. But in the other report, the Collier's report is, it's smaller, it's harder to read. I don't know if you wanna leave it there or not, but I left it there for now. I think for the most part, going down, this is all the same. I made some headings in the school building committee recommendations. I did clean up some of the text, the formatting. Tried to simplify some of the comments based upon what was said. And really the section, I think that is the biggest deal, is the community involvement communication. That's probably where I spent the most amount of time and tried to make them statements for the future group, like any future SBC should evaluate alternative meeting approaches. A future SBC should consider an avenue that, allows two-way communication. So instead of like throwing ourselves under the bus or process under the bus, I tried to make it so that it was feedback for future to consider because we thought it was important. So that's probably where you want to read. When you get down to the appendix and I saw your comment, I don't know if you saw my email back. It's an insert, so I can't change his report.
Oh, no, what I was suggesting is that we take that information and put it in our report. So in other words, those couple of
Excerpt
things,
those couple of things into
Yeah,
our
I-
report.
yeah, I think
It's
that,
theirs though.
well, I think when they talked about the mill rate, do we want to talk about the mill rate as being one of the reasons that it did not, now, I'm not exactly sure where it would fit, probably that, pros and cons section of why it, let me see if I can find it.
He stated it. I don't know why we need to restate it. You're talking about this right here, this B. Now, I didn't understand what you were saying in your email, sorry.
Yeah,
The cost to build a new school resulted in a significant impact to the mill rate that taxpayers did not approve.
right.
I don't know that we really know what the impact on the mill rate is. We made, an estimate of what it would be, but I think he states it there. I don't know what else we would state into the portion we wrote.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the factors considered, oh wait, that's not for project selection, that's not it. Maybe it's after the referendum, like you said, Brianna, that why it was not successful. And in terms of helping next time, maybe we need to do a little more work on the mill rate to see. And then,
Well, that was so there's an added line. Sorry, I don't remember where it was. It was about, our feedback was about. And this was feedback from everybody saying that we were working in a vacuum that was just school-based, because that was our task. There is a line in there that the charge should be provide flexibility enough for all costs to be considered, not just school costs.
okay, the
So
whole town,
That, yes,
and that's the mill rate.
that line is
Okay.
in there, and I think that's the direct impact is the mill rate.
Do we want to add the words mill rate? Kind of,
I'd
not.
have to find out where it was, and I'm just telling you what it said.
I'm trying to scroll back to find,
let's see,
sorry.
is it on page 17? As Brianna pointed out, let's see.
I didn't.
Well, while you're searching, I would add to that, not just the mill rate as Ann appropriately suggests, but the debt ratio for the town that came up as an issue late in the process. Where the town doesn't have a debt policy, but it it appears that we would have greatly exceeded that recommended level by the state, so that might be something useful for a future committee to understand in addition to the mill rate.
Oh, we do have to move, right? Yeah.
It's actually me, I'm the one
Okay,
that is in this concern.
you can tell who's taught, they know the move.
I think it was it's in the charge section right here,
So which one,
15,
which page?
15.
the last line, for example, this is, and I don't know if I added this today, I have no idea. For example, the community wanted the cost of non-school related town projects, and that was not part of the SBC charge. So
Okay. Okay.
that's what it says now, whether that's what you're looking for it to say or not.
Yeah, the other thing that I thought might be interesting to take from their report is when they talked about that one district that got the 10% reimbursement. And then the whole idea of Mansfield right next door, and they got another 10%. Is there a way to kind of, you know, say,
That's what this
there
is.
was the possibility that, like another town, you know, we could have gotten an extra 10.
That's what that is.
Okay,
They didn't get the extra 10%, they got a higher reimbursement rate
Reimbursement
because of their enrollment. Their population, that's just what they get, that's their stat
okay.
rate.
Is that Mansfield or the other
Yes,
town?
whereas in other towns, and we're seeing more of this now, are writing their own legislation for their town to get special permission to have a special mill rate, or, sorry, a special reimbursement rate set for them for their project.
Excellent, so that.
That's what that is getting at.
There might be some language, Phil, to add to that, just saying as recent precedent, you know, it's.
Yeah, I mean,
It seems to me Mansfield got a better reimbursement rate,
Oh, big time.
they absolutely.
primarily because they were also consolidating multiple schools into one.
Mm-mm.
Didn't that help them?
Nope,
Does it have to do that they're a pilot town?
nope,
No?
just have to do with all that whole income basis thing. The students help them, the student population, and not the K-8 Mansfield school population. The Yukon population brings their
26,000.
income based, down, and that means they get a higher rate.
Huh,
Yep,
that's really something.
yeah,
Yeah, because if you think about the income level of most of the students, it's low, right?
On paper.
correct.
Well, right, yes.
That's what, and that's what it is.
And so that takes the math, that quantity of them takes the math in a whole new direction.
Unless.
Funny how math works like that.
I think that's why people are writing, and this was one of the recommendations. If your state rep and your state senator would support this and they understand the process, which is one of the reasons we wanted to meet with Tammy and Jeff. They understand this, because they're voting on things when other towns bring it to them, right? They're sitting there hearing this. If they would support the project, then they could then be advocates to try and get special legislation for Willington. And it's not your new reimbursement rate always, it's just for that project.
So on a related topic, I think I've mentioned this to you on the phone, I'm not sure if I did, but I've been thinking about maybe if we should be recommending or offering as an option, or maybe even regardless of this report, we should be pursuing the legislature changing the approval sequence. So, for example, if we could have gone through the initial application and approval process with the state and gotten our declaration of our reimbursement rate and then a much truer cost estimate.
Right.
Before referendum, and then I'm sure they would want a sequence that makes the referendum come pretty close after, because they don't want to tie up that and commit to it. But instead of making you first get the referendum and then go to them and get your final decision on what your rate is gonna be and your cost, then at least when you're presenting to the taxpayers for referendum, you've already gotten a commitment, a tentative commitment from the state
And that's
as to what your costs would be.
Right.
And now the taxpayers are voting on a much more known number.
Something closer to reality.
Right.
It's still not gonna be precise.
Right, well, and that's why I didn't say a guarantee, you know, but a
I
much
think
better
that hurts this
estimate.
whole process.
Yes, I agree.
The ambiguities in the cost to the taxpayer.
Yeah, just the fact that we have the space waiver, well, if we get it, it's gonna cost this much, if we don't get it, it's gonna cost this much.
But we don't
That
know.
added that doubled the options on anything we looked at.
And Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's only true if you go outside your enrollment and what the state allows you for that reimbursement. If you were within the enrollment parameters of states that for us, which didn't work for us, as Phil explained, we could have known that
The
sooner.
space standards based on enrollment, yes, correct.
Would apply to.
Right.
But
Yes, you would not, the space waiver would not be an issue if you could present a project that fit within the state's space standard for your enrollment.
But it doesn't mean that they're not gonna try and find ways to reimburse you less.
even if
Right.
you meet the,
They might go, you know what, that section doesn't qualify. They look for items to,
there you go.
Right, and if you remember, we had a lot of discussion
You'll
about
be
that
closer.
when we were trying to figure out the cost of renovating or renovating to new, whatever term you want to use. Hall school, because a lot more, the rate was automatically 10% higher. But there were a lot more exclusions in a renovation, because there are a lot of things about the existing building you don't get to apply
I
to
do
a
remember
grant.
that, you know, saying that they're not gonna reimburse us for all the space we had there because we technically didn't qualify for it.
And certain types of work don't qualify too, especially on an existing building, so.
And that's gonna happen with all our
So-
repairs now too.
All of those things, it would be nice to be able to run those through the grinder and get a tentative approval from the state and know what the numbers are. Present that to the taxpayers for the referendum.
Question to you, Phil, everyone's demographics seem to be pointing in a downward direction. Is the state gonna readjust to this?
they just set the reimbursement rate and they didn't change anything from there. They had like a 3 or 4 year projection. And we're in the final year of it, and what they posted was the same exact number that they said it was gonna be for us. So it will be interesting to see what happens in the next cycle.
Oh, so there'd be a whole new,
Yeah, I mean, but everyone's trends are going down, less funding from the state.
everyone's population trends are going down, or just
No,
the funding
the per-
percentage,
the
the
funding
reimbursement rate?
percentage, yeah.
But even if you were a town that happened to have increased enrollment, you would get less?
I,
Per student.
Gotcha, thank you.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't guarantee that, but that's what I've seen the trends is that the percentage for everybody continues to go down. Like years ago, we were, 68 and now we're 58. It just keeps trickling down because they can't afford $60 million projects either. Let's be honest. So, and then the last thing here was obviously the executive summary from Colliers. Those are the 4 things, I think it was 4 things I put into the appendix. You got the ed specs, just the square footage, the enrollment study, and then the land study. And even though some of these things are hard to read, at least it gives people an idea. The next superintendent, first selectman, chair of the SBC, if that happens again, when they start this process again, and you start looking for documents, it's much easier to know what exists. That was the idea behind it. So,
There were a couple other things I had on my list. When on page 3, I think it's page 3, where we talked about regionalization discussion.
I added Dan.
Did you add it?
Yep.
Excellent. The whole idea of not
This right
having
here.
a seat on the board of ed or
Yep.
any kind of say. Okay. And then the other thing on page 17, you know how we were trying to get someone to fix a bathroom and the plumber did at all?
Yeah, and
Is that not relevant or,
I don't think it is to this committee.
okay,
I think, so Ann sent some feedback about having a hard time for districts getting people to want to, professionals to be able to go in and, touch old plumbing, because they know if it breaks, it becomes a bigger job. And I don't know that that's an important factor for this report versus it's an important piece for the Board of Education to know.
mhm,
Cause I don't know if it didn't really impact the SBC, I don't think.
Okay,
That was my 2 cents on it.
okay, it's kind of in the next step, it's becoming a factor.
Yeah.
And the fact that we only got one proposal for our RFP
Yep.
to do the repairs, that kind of scared me a little bit, and I went back to thinking about the professionals who don't want to replace bathrooms in 100-year-old schools. Are we gonna run into that?
It made me very nervous, you know, in general, because I expected that under normal circumstances, they should have elicited at least 4 or 5 good, solid responses. Just to engage and be a part of the process, to develop a relationship beyond QA&M. That being said, I don't know why. I suspect, you know, there are costs associated with preparing a proposal, and responding to that. That's, you know, reimbursed without a sincere, you know, commitment necessarily or firm understanding of where the town actually wants to go. It might be hard to solicit to engage professionals to invest that effort.
Especially after watching this process.
Yeah, and the other concern is, I mean, this did get a little bit toxic in the end, and quite frankly, it probably does have a little bit to do with that as well. I mean, it's,
and
you know, there are professional concerns to be associated, and if it's gonna be a grudge match the entire time, some things particularly just, you know, sometimes you take a pass. You know, that being said, I firmly think the Board of Ed needs professional guidance.
Oh, definitely.
Develop a plan, and I hope we can, you know, continue to pull it together.
probably some of the likely parties were people who might have even been involved in our earlier RFPs that got canceled when we hit the referendum. And maybe they decided, okay, we've thrown our chips in once already on Willington. It's good enough.
I think it's worth adding those things because part of what we did was look at where we are now. And those are facts that we discovered. That it would be hard to find people to help us.
On which side, the plumber
Like
type
canvassing.
person?
Right,
That
I get that it's.
something as simple as it's proven difficult to get contractors to work on the buildings due to
A
the
challenge
age of
that
the
we
components or something to
came
that
across,
effect.
Yeah,
It's something you said many times in presentations.
I mean, it could fit in the consideration factors that SBC considered in
Choosing a new building.
and pushing a project forward to referendum. There was a whole section in that
right, when we talked about renovating or,
because the difficulty in renovating the existing facilities.
I think it said something kind of like that, actually, if I remember.
I
It was
will,
like kind of,
I'm just gonna highlight this and make a note in here and just say. Add. A piece,
what is it below that?
well, and it's in the factors considered for project selection, I think that was what, it might be the one below it.
Yeah, I think so. If you go down, what page is that?
Difficulty in
Challenge of
Yeah.
engaging. Professionals.
What is that? What page is that?
To work on a facility.
Very good.
Put it there for now, and you can think about how to.
It says potential for hidden conditions, page 14. And so that is related, in my opinion,
For example,
potential for hidden conditions and availability or willingness of
Of
professionals to come work on
to
the
work
building
on
as it
ancient
stands.
buildings,
Mhm.
100 years.
Yeah, you could put it right in those bullets. Yeah.
I do think that matters. That was. a
You
lot
said
of
page
effort.
14?
Correct.
It's right on the bottom of your screen, that next set of bullets.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So close.
it's all right, as long as I know it's there, yeah.
It could go under age of facility and existing conditions. It's hard
Yes.
to employ professionals to work on difficulty employing professionals to work on aged.
Or professionals are unwilling, it was difficult to find willing professionals.
I have.
It wasn't hard for us to find them.
Yeah, I can work, I know what your point is.
You got it,
Yeah.
okay.
I think
Yeah.
that matters.
There's one other point. They pointed out that in the next, every year, we're probably gonna have like a 6 to 8% inflation. And then we're looking at like a 10-year plan of repair with capital improvements, I think, if that's where we're going on the board. I think that's something to take into consideration, that rather, that on our next steps, I think that's something to take into consideration, that with the inflation,
That's in there.
it's in there, okay.
I think that it's only through 2025, it's not through the $19 million, 18,972, 806, it had the same escalation as the cost of the building.
Right, it might be, to get at their point in the recommendations section, it might just be helpful to say future Board of Ed or SBC members can, or SBC committees should consider the fact that the impact of rising escalation, for any deferred capital improvement renovations.
Are you gonna remember?
Hard to believe someone.
Hold on, he's gonna put a
Got
comment.
that,
Take it.
Well, I think I already had that red line in the old version too. I'll send you comments.
Oh, that one right there? What you just said?
Did you get it?
No.
No, okay, so, yeah, so I'd say future, school building committees and the Board of Ed should consider the impact of, escalation on future capital improvement efforts, or escalation and phasing, complex project phasing, quite frankly.
Escalating cost.
I'll work with it afterwards, as long as I know
And all
what you're
Big
looking
idea.
at. I'm doing it
Find
intentional. It's intentional, don't worry. Facing,
Costs or increases?
And,
In capital planning.
that's what it was.
that's it.
Thank you.
It's pretty standard in capital planning.
Yeah.
You always
Yeah.
escalate.
It is.
Yeah, the escalation's a little stronger right now.
Yeah, people underestimate or usually undervalue.
A few years ago, you could figure on a 3% per year escalation. Right now, it seems to be like 6 to 8.
I'm seeing 6 to 8 over the next 3 years. I haven't had people try to project that down. Nobody will, because it's.
Yeah, it's too volatile.
Right.
It's too volatile, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I remember the inflation in the 70s, my perspective is different.
Or your perspective is apropos right now.
Yes, well said. Bill, I have a question, that's germane to what you were talking about before about reimbursement in the number 7, next steps of college, or the last point D. He's saying the state reimbursement calculation for Willington should be confirmed, as it's approximately 10 percentage points below neighboring Mansfield. And it is believed Willington should qualify for equal or greater based on the economic status of the town. So is that just like Scott saying that?
I mean, you could say that, but
It's not reality.
we can ask for it, that, I think the whole intention, and this was the whole point of this grid, that we felt we had a very strong argument if we had to go in front of OSCGR and ask for the space waiver because of where we were at. I think that's what it's tied to, and what Mansfield got their percentage.
Oh, okay, so the space waiver just clouds everything. It's not a straight comparison with Mansfield.
No,
They didn't need a space waiver.
I don't know if they got a space waiver, I don't think so.
Their student population is.
Was
way
much,
down.
yeah, they were blending 3 to 1, so
Yeah.
they probably,
I will
They
tell
probably had some economies of space.
yeah.
I will tell you from my friends who teach there that they have one music room, one art room, the art teacher's back on the cart.
Yeah.
So maybe they didn't go the space waiver route, but it's an issue, yeah.
Well, they have their own ed specs, they made their
Yeah,
decisions
yes, they
on
made those
how big you want your
decisions.
cap, how big you want your gym, how big you want your library, those big spaces, they made decisions on that, and they may have prioritized them differently,
Mhm.
so.
It was fairly efficiently laid out. Provising as well, so whether or not they cut programmatic elements of it efficiently. Put together.
Did I run through some of my comments? Page 10, Phil, site selection. The size of suitable land for a new pre-K to 8, 15 acres.
Yep.
That's clearly stated in the guidelines. Page is sticking together. Page 14. The second group of bullets, the sentence that precedes it, hold a referendum to build a new school on a new site rather than work with existing facilities, period.
Hold on, tell me where we're at.
Page 14. Second group of bullets,
Right there, the sentence that leads.
the headline sentence. Hold a referendum to build a new school on a new site rather than work with the existing facilities, period.
That's fair.
And then one of the factors down below, potential for hidden conditions.
Hold on, Ralph, make sure that says it's worded the way you want it.
Then work with the existing facilities, correct.
Can I make a suggestion rather than work, say rather than renovate the existing?
Yeah, I was gonna say, work with has a funny.
Renovate the existing facilities,
No, I disagree. I'd rather see it stay like that.
What's your feeling on wording it that way?
I don't think that we did a deep enough dive into what could be done with Hall.
So you don't wanna call it renovation is what you're saying?
This whole section is about.
Right. Work with just doesn't sound as professional of a comment, like the wording.
It also feels like it was, you know.
Oh, don't, all of this should be at a 6th grade level, not at a master's of science.
Well, a 6th grade level for understanding, yes, but it can still be worded professionally. Rather than.
And then the bullet,
modifying and existing facilities. Does that satisfy it, Ralph? New site rather than modifying existing facilities?
I would rather see working with the existing facilities.
But working with could imply that that people are just gonna stay there. Without renovating. And what we were deciding on was the difference between renovating that versus.
It was really a combination of renovation and additions. I'm looking at option 1A. Could we use the words renovate, type in addition, Ralph? Would that be better?
It was
Combination of both.
alteration and extend was what.
I thought there's been alterations with the other guys.
I don't care what
I know.
extend means, rather, I mean, that was the other option, I think you're right about that, instead of work with. Rather than an alteration, what was it?
I like renovation addition from option 1.
Alteration and addition was what,
Alterate or extend. is what-
alterations.
Alteration and
Whatever,
addition,
yeah.
Extend.
That's what it
Like renovate.
I need to find out what that meant.
All right, I'm just being goofy.
Yeah,
Have fun, man.
around there and then, and alteration, addition.
What was the formal
To the
proposal,
existing
our final, when we were
Now
down
we can
to,
go back and look
what was the final name of it?
where the
I don't
pictures
remember
are.
either.
And then the bullet that
Option 1.
addresses potential
Option
for
2.
hidden conditions.
Alteration.
Within the existing facilities. Because
Renovation,
you're listing all the factors that led us to new. So hidden conditions are not likely new. But hidden conditions within the existing facility is
You
what
guys see what
pushed
you
us.
just added?
Yeah, that's fine.
they use
Right.
the words renovate and addition. Renovation, that's demolish, forget all that.
The QA&M?
Two-story addition.
Page 8.
Page A is the, introduction to the.
Right, so in the budget summary, we use the term alteration/extension of HMS. That's
Page
what we-
7 is renovation.
Alteration extension?
We used all of
That
them.
works.
We did.
Apparently.
I think we moved away from renovate because the state sees it as meaning something specific. We were not renovating.
There were
That's
definitely.
That's why it was alteration extension, even though
Okay.
Yeah, what has.
There were a lot of additions.
And then an alteration/extension of
The existing.
the existing, so.
There you go. All right. I'm good with that.
Cool.
Page 15. Under funding. Last sentence, this topic was difficult to navigate as many townspeople, comma, as well as many town officials, comma, were concerned about spending that was not eligible for reimbursement. It wasn't just the townspeople.
I have,
It was members of this committee, it was other,
They're townspeople too, though.
Yeah, it wasn't intended to exclude anybody, but yes, I don't mind.
I think it's important to include that there were some town officials that did not want us to spend any more than we
why don't we
I
just-
don't-
absolutely had to start the process.
I have those words highlighted too, many townspeople, also on the same page, many taxpayers. How do we know that? Like,
We voted it down.
okay, but did we ever do a survey or anything to ask people specifically why? No, we did not. Many townspeople were concerned. How do we know that? Many
They did voice it though.
taxpayers did not
Yeah.
understand.
We had some pretty good feedback on our meetings,
Okay, so it was from,
the audience.
okay.
The town.
So I don't know if we should say that because
Can we
it
just
seems
say
like
people?
really like opinion, like really
Yeah, so
not very solid information. This should be a report about what happened.
particularly in the large forum meetings, when like the all school meetings and stuff, and the town meetings, when we were approving the $100,000 things, there was a lot of discussion about.
I know it happened.
You
it
know,
just
what was
seemed-
eligible versus not, and that's what I was drawing from when I wrote that.
Okay, I just thought, Ralph's one that he just put there, many townspeople were concerned. I wrote some townspeople expressed concern. I don't know if that changes anything. To me, it makes it. I don't know. Both
All right.
okay.
Does-
I don't know.
Could I just ask you, does the first two sentences
Which
sum it up? Just read the funding section.
funding, yes.
If you just said the two sentences, this is the recommendation,
I was confused honestly about this thing with the positive and the negative impact and asked someone else to
three
read it with
sentences,
me.
sorry. A more comprehensive and developed proposal at an additional initial cost
Yeah,
could have provided additional clarity about the project and its impact to the town ahead of the referendum.
that makes more sense now.
Isn't that just the statement that we're talking about?
Yes.
I agree with that.
Okay, so if you just eliminated the last 3 lines.
What I have highlighted there, yeah.
I mean, what the people
The only-
said is important, of course.
Right.
Did that happen? Yes, of course it did. It just, without some kind of. I don't
It
know.
feels nebulous to you.
Give
It's
it
not
like
the
a site or
recommendation.
something, yeah.
So.
That's what I was trying to
what
change
if-
these to.
Right, so what if if those last 3 lines were replaced with something just a little more academic that said, care should be taken with expenses that are not eligible with
Fair to say, like,
With
it was
sharing
important to,
information.
it's
The-
important to townspeople to know.
what I'm trying, in my mind, what I'm trying to do is make sure that we leave the information for the next committee to be thinking about the fact that you're gonna have expenses that are pre-referendum, so they're not reimbursable.
Mhm.
And that is a topic that should be carefully considered.
Is that, care should be taken with identifying project costs and sharing it with the public? Is that what you're saying? I'm trying,
No, this is just the issue of whether things were pre-referendum and hence they're reimbursable or not.
I think the main point that has to come out of this, in my opinion, is that sometimes spending more money up front that's not reimbursable will get you farther.
Mhm.
Right. Than being a penny pincher in that stage of the game. Right. And having it in the butt, right, at referendum time, which is
Right,
kind of where we got.
and finding a way to get that in here, I think is important, because there will be many people who will say, why are you spending so much before you're eligible for reimbursement? Because that was said this time.
So something about clear communication.
Are we
About
talking
that.
about the 200,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or what could have been.
Would have been more than 200,000.
So,
Okay.
this, everything I have highlighted should be eliminated, is what I'm saying, first of all.
Yeah.
The
Yep.
other case stuff, because isn't that what you're gonna change?
No, that was a
Something
thought
else.
that went,
Okay,
didn't go the right direction.
okay.
Karen,
I don't even know if this,
Karen should
this
be
needs to be
taken
there.
to elaborate pre-referendum and post-referendum, potential pre-referendum and post-referendum costs to taxpayers.
as a, I'm not sure I hear, that's what I hear them saying.
Well, the risk of muddying the waters, I don't think it was as much a concern about non-reimbursable costs at that time as it was. I remember a number of people coming to the first town meeting for the first funding request saying, well, why aren't all possibilities being considered? It appeared that we were taking one path, which was a new school path. And if you remember, Scott kind of jumped in and said, oh yeah. And then we developed a twin track of new and renovation. And that seemed to restore some confidence in our funding process, but I don't see anything here about that. I know it sounds a bit.
Okay, so hang on to that thought, because I think that's a branch off of this. Don't lose that thought, I'm just.
Or in other words, if people have a clear understanding of the intent for the funds,
Right, and I think a lot of that may go to charge also, because
I completely agree with
the
you.
charge did at some times muddy that same water.
Yes, 100% agree. Because at the town meeting, the charge was discussed in the context of this SBC would evaluate what the best path was, like new school, no school, all the possibilities. That evolved into a new school only in the perception of many. And that might-
Eventually it did evolve to new school only, but that was as part of our process. But in the beginning, there's definitely some.
Is this a transparency issue? Do we want to use the word transparency?
I
don't
think some people just didn't, understand that.
And I think next time we might hopefully get the charge to be clear on that too. To avoid some of that misunderstanding.
Totally agree.
If you remove what I have highlighted. And then change this word proposal to investigation.
Yeah.
Is that,
How about this? Yes, if what Phil just said, you take out the sentence he's got highlighted. A more comprehensive and developed proposal. Could have provided additional clarity, yes. And then I would just, in that case, at the end, I would add one more sentence. Something to the fact of. Early costs may not be reimbursable pre-referendum.
As in.
Well, make it a recommendation, Mike.
Okay, that goes back to what I was saying, care should be taken to understand. If early costs are reimbursable, how's that?
That's good, and I would piggyback on that, Mike, because the other thing that people fail to understand, that we often have at our SBC finance subcommittee meetings is that the money comes back if we don't use it.
Right, hang on just a second, I just wanna finish the sentence. Care should be taken to understand or clarify or something, if early costs are reimbursable.
I think clarifies good.
Taken to clarify if early costs are reimbursable.
Or that, clarify that.
Clarify what, right?
well, aren't you I think I'm missing the boat on this, because I think Ralph was saying, and I agree with you on this. I think the point is, I know, you're way over there, I'm way over here. I think the point is, aren't we recommending, like, maybe we should have spent some more money up front
That's what I'm.
to get the information?
Yes,
I think we should just say that,
I
like,
thought
can we
it
just
was-
be that blunt?
explain that to people, like the purpose for that, or why that would be a good choice.
Yeah, I just feel like somewhere we should also be noting the fact that early costs are not reimbursable.
I agree with
This
you.
sounds like you're
But
not telling the people.
You could put a but here at the end of reimbursable and say that money would be well spent to whatever you would have done
Fully understand the
with that
process.
money.
That's what I was
to
saying,
make
a
it
developed
better.
proposal, I don't see it as a proposal. I see it as the investigation that we did in the beginning. If we spent more money on that investigation and not to beat a dead horse, but if I hear Jim say one more time, we should have done visioning sessions. I think, you're right. I feel it, you're right.
I didn't hear it the first time.
He's, well, just, and it was in our RFP for the Board of Ed that just went out to get some information about making sure the public has a good understanding of what you're trying to accomplish, right? That's part of the purpose. And I think for us, we were trying to be tight with our pennies, smart, right? Which is good.
Yeah.
But I also think we could have looked, and I think that's the recommendation, right? We could have spent a little more money earlier on to get us going and make sure we had more information out to the public. Is that what you're trying to get across?
It would have been beneficial too, yes.
Additional early due diligence could lead to
Community
improved
acceptance
efficiency
yeah,
and.
and
Engagement.
understanding.
Right.
Engagement. Community engagement.
Well, that's
Yeah.
Okay, so really there's,
Pay for it, that it's worth.
it's just that there's a couple of closely related thoughts all trying to fit into this paragraph.
Yeah, and it could be
Wrestling.
funding or the charge, right?
It's making me think too, I mean. Some of you
I
have a
have
lot
to
of
change the
experience with
words,
home ownership and understanding how economics work within a town, within a state, within a country, and some others. Like me, are not as experienced, so I learned a lot, like, as we went through things and through listening and talking with all of you, and so maybe other people were in the same boat and weren't really sure what certain things meant or why doing something like this would help later.
Right.
So we have to, I guess, think about our audience. They're not all, you know, Ralph with his zillions of years of experience with
Sure.
things. Like, that's why
Sure.
I'm asking my questions that were probably silly some of the time, but.
How about this?
Now you have all this insight.
I'm so
If you
sorry.
start with the first sentence, the SBC was efficient in its use of town funds ahead of the referendum. That basically what that is saying is, we were very careful about what we spent. However, a more comprehensive, so maybe however belongs at the beginning of that sentence.
That's good.
Cause now that is telling us we were really careful, but maybe we didn't do enough.
Yeah, I think full sentence says that, I'm more confident we can go.
Right, and so by just adding the word however, I think it sets that in the right, you're thinking in the right direction.
Would that have looked like hiring Colliers earlier to guide us?
There's the technical expertise section, and I think Carrie captures that.
Yeah.
Further down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, can I be rusty about the words above that too?
We can't back up yet,
Are we here?
We're really close to getting this paragraph
sorry.
right.
And I'm sure Ralph has additional comments.
Rather than put a comma, honestly.
I just wanna call one paragraph done.
Is that, care should be taken to clarify if early costs are reimbursable and the value that you're receiving, the value of the products, the value of the services being.
Well, I think you're claiming the value in the sentence before it, by saying a more comprehensive developed investigative proposal, blah, 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 could have provided additional clarity, so you're showing the value there.
And you have to say not reimbursable, right?
Reimbursable.
Not, whether they're not reimbursable,
Whether or not
early
they're-
costs are not reimbursable. Before, at the last two words, then I think.
At an additional initial non-reimbursable cost.
Say that again.
Parentheses.
Say it again?
What you have in parentheses, second line,
Yep.
at an additional,
Well, we don't know if they're gonna be unreimbursable at that time. If the
Possibly.
state changes the formula,
Yeah, I
they
know.
may be reimbursable, who knows? Although it's not likely.
This is
going
what
to.
we experienced.
How about, but this investment could lead to better community understanding and engagement?
Mhm,
I like that.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
But this investment could lead to better, community understanding and engagement.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Everyone feel like we got that paragraph?
I think that was the piece that,
Okay,
right there for me.
Well, we can
check off that paragraph.
Okay, great, so above that.
I'm sorry we made you wait, Brianna.
No, it's just
Where are you
English
first?
majors busting out over here with my pen. I used one show. Okay, referendum results, page 15. It says many taxpayers did not understand why the questions were worded as such regarding the ballot. So, okay, how do we know that? Yes, we know that because people have shared that with us. But can we find a different way to write it rather than I wrote some taxpayers wondered why the questions were. That to me just seems a little bit. Yeah, well, how do we know that? Like, I would challenge that if I was reading this in the future. How did you guys, how do you know? that?
Unless it's
Like,
in
what-
there to the mic, make it a recommendation and it comes across so much easier. What would you do different?
Well, so that was.
It doesn't matter, you can put a recommendation anywhere you want.
Well, okay, how would people know? They would have come to meetings and understood why we were presenting it that way. You can't put it that on the ballot or have it at voting day. Why?
Is this about communication again? Is that what
I
that's
think,
about?
I think so, but again, sometimes in here it says that we didn't communicate enough, and I don't always agree with that. Sometimes it just was, people weren't able to come listen or didn't take the time to be honest, and this probably, it's fair to say both ways. I'm not gonna blame one side or the other on that, but it's not that we certainly didn't hide it, and I don't know how else we could have shouted it.
Okay,
It's a
so,
simple answer why they were written that way.
right. So maybe if the sentence starts with, it's with saying the text of the questions was very specific for legal reasons.
True.
Very nerve wracking.
We've already.
Everyone watching you type every letter.
That's what provided by bond counsel to me, OSG, that they may not know what CGR is.
Remember, this is
Yeah,
a report for the selectmen and the future SBC. Community can read this, they still might not get some of this.
Yeah.
But it's the outcome.
Okay, so
the
it's
audience bid.
important
Yeah.
that they understand that that was a problem for some people.
Right.
And they were.
So, all right, so let's follow the sentence I started. The text of the questions on the ballot was very specific for legal reasons.
Right.
Following legal requirements.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause
How about grant requirements? Following.
We might be, I don't know, are we getting too worried about the words? It was very specific, it was legal reasons,
Okay.
right? It was to make the grant application, to meet the legal requirement of the bond council, which is law, right?
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
Works.
then just put requirements, don't do reasons and requirements.
I just typing while you're talking.
Okay,
Take out the word legal in parentheses, and I think we got a requirement of the bond. So there you go.
There you go.
there you go.
Now you know
Okay,
why it
great.
was
There's
like
questions on the ballot, very specific. And then the thought that comes above it, how do we better say that?
I had the first sentence.
The sentence that's above it,
I
about
think
did
it's-
not understand, I'm trying to
this
have that follow
That's
this
my problem.
new sentence instead.
This is the one she doesn't like.
Yeah, I'm trying to have that thought follow this, the
But
text
the format
is specific.
caused.
This caused. We don't have to say the format, because we already said it, we already said that
You want this?
the text is specific. So we've set the stage, right? We just need to say that this created either confusion
Was
or
confusing to some
misunderstanding
voters.
or, right, yes. this led to confusion.
But why were they
Or-
confused about it? Because they didn't know why we had to do it that way?
Well, yeah, but we're reporting right now what we learned, right? This led to confusion.
Yes, so
And
what should we
questions.
do better next time?
Well, this goes against what Phil just said, but I would argue that goes from recommendations.
Okay.
How do we know there was confusion?
Because people
Many
expressed it.
taxpayers did not understand why the questions were worded as such.
Maybe we need to.
Which I think is a valid problem.
Yeah.
And maybe we need to have that at those 10 workshops, so they see what it's gonna look like. The
So-
That's what I'm
question,
saying, it's a
Early
question
in-
of communication.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
right.
Or would it, should it be on the cards we sent out, or,
Cause we may have said this, I don't know if there was any formal communication about what the ballot is and why the total amount is on there and why things are worded. We may have glossed over it. But I don't know that we put out anything in slides, anything in, you know,
Yeah, again, it might have been something we understood because we were here. But if I wasn't part of this committee, I may have completely missed that.
like you say, in communicating
Just seeing these questions for the first time when you actually vote.
information
Lot of work,
to
it's
the
confusing.
public.
Most towns mail you the ballot like the week before the election, so you know what's going on, but we don't do that.
well, the other thing is, there's nothing about the reimbursement here, so unless you've been following it, you don't know about the reimbursement, you think that the town's gonna have to pay 62 million.
I don't know if we were allowed to see that
Is that,
because we didn't know the exact.
is that better?
Sorry.
I added this at the end of this.
It's like, but like.
The next
About
questions on the ballot were very specific.
communicating the
People
information
received
to the
requirements of the
public.
law. Communicating the information to the public well before the referendum would have been better. Communicating the information.
On the ballot,
Communicating this information to the
Yeah,
public
thank you.
rather than that.
Mhm.
So are we saying we're leaving the sentence highlighted in yellow there? In which case I think it still needs a little work.
Yeah, I know, cause like. The point
So you could
is.
get rid of the parentheses part.
The wording of the questions,
Mhm.
Yeah, that whole.
understand the wording of the questions.
Did not understand.
what's the problem with the wording of the question? Them thinking they're gonna have to pay 62 million.
Well, that's
and
the
there's
and.
no reimbursement.
That's part of
that
the
the
problem,
problem?
and that's why it says, and the cost may have proved.
There was-
to voters.
Numbers talked about non-public outreach that always took into account reimbursement. Yet, when they got to the ballot, you're seeing the total cost of the project.
Right.
And this is the way it has to be to satisfy bond costs. But
Oh, yeah.
that particular
That's an excellent
detail
point, Ralph.
was not well communicated.
Were we not allowed to put it?
Further
Is that part of
clarification
the
about total
bond
project
council?
cost versus,
Wait a minute.
Is that-
You had to have gone to say.
Right, but maybe they said you can't list anything, can't say
No,
anything
that was
about.
within the rules, but you had to get to the school website to figure it out. Who could do that?
We were not allowed to say anything about
No, we weren't.
reimbursement?
Factual, we were.
We could have.
So during the blackout period, we could essentially.
No, I mean, the actual
On the
words.
Not
on
in the
it.
wording of the question,
No,
no,
can't do that.
no, the wording of the question had to be exactly those words.
Okay,
Okay,
so,
read
yeah,
that. Is that helpful?
the, the.
I think if you,
Below the yellow. Yeah.
We haven't.
clarify the cost to the taxpayer.
Well, and
Nah,
I
that's
think
not
you need
good.
to point out reimbursement.
yeah, that
in
word should
there.
be in there somewhere.
That
But-
could have been
that's just in the
factual,
clarification, that's in the that's what you're gonna communicate.
that could have been factual information put out even during the blackout period.
Yes, absolutely.
I would like.
And it was there,
Uh,
if you could navigate to it.
not Legally allowed on the document.
I don't agree with you. I think that that's too late, and I think that's the point. Is if you hear for 8 months, a year, 2 years, here's the cost, it's $30 million. And then a month before, you hear the cost is $60 million, because that's what the question says, that's pretty darn confusing.
Mhm.
So I think that if you're gonna do this again, the communication is, hey, that first slideshow that you start presenting to the public, you would say, here's an estimated cost. And this would be a sample question, and we wanna explain why, it says 60 million and not 30. That to me is the communication. And I think that's what you're saying there, and the wording was. I don't know that you need the yellow in there now, because you're clarifying cost. And you're clarifying that it was, you're not even clarifying, it just says because it was legal.
I think part of the problem is that the people that you're talking about who are gonna hear that 60 million, 30 million at all the workshops aren't the ones who were confused. I think it's the ones who didn't get any information for whatever reason. They somehow didn't go to the workshops, didn't read the Willington Wire, didn't, don't talk to a lot of people that would be talking about this.
So for this, the purpose of this paragraph, can we eliminate what's highlighted in yellow? I think Bill's right, we probably could just eliminate. what's
It just
highlighted in
doesn't
yellow.
say the word reimbursement, which is what I hear. And
So can we get rid of what's in the yellow and then we'll talk
Yes.
about reimbursement?
Mhm, I think
Okay,
so.
so delete that. Delete.
And then
Okay,
how
let's talk
to
about
reach
reimbursement.
everybody, this is.
Yeah, and I don't wanna spend a lot of time on recommendations here, because that should be in the part that says recommendations, cause if someone skims over and says, I just wanna go to the recommendations.
Yeah.
We gotta make sure it's in there,
Can you just say that,
not that anyone would ever skim over all 60 pages of our report or whatever. 28.
How about,
32.
how about you have clarified the distinction between between total project cost and cost to taxpayer,
there you go.
or something along those lines?
Total cost versus net cost.
And reimburse, yeah,
That's reimbursement.
Yeah, that word.
How about just after reimbursement?
There you go.
Total cost to taxpayers after.
No, the
reimbursement.
cost after reimbursement. Try that first before we change words. Before the run, we'll just clarify the cost after reimbursement. And then beneficial to
The cost to taxpayers.
Why do we have to say the taxpayers? That's what they're voting on, right? Or,
I would still wanna put, like, despite the fact that it was not listed as a ballot, but maybe that's already explained.
so maybe more of this granular information should be in the recommendations.
Okay.
Right?
I'm fine.
The recommendation should be, we need
Each
to
to
be
the
more
test.
specific.
Make sure people know what it's gonna say.
We need to be more specific about the difference between the total project cost and the cost to the taxpayer after reimbursement. And what was the last part you just said there, Brianna?
Great question.
Teach to the
Teach to
test.
the test, like, this is what it's gonna look like. Here's why it has to say it like this, you know?
So,
And it's not going to say this part that we all like, but that's because we can't put it in there. So don't be worried, it still exists.
I don't think you need
That's how
after
you-
reimbursement, I think you just leave it as it is.
Okay.
The ballot is there right below it, the question is right there below it. And I gotta give some belief that future people looking at this are gonna understand that there's a difference between what you're actually going to pay and what has to be on the question.
What is explained in a bunch of other places in this same report.
Right.
They will, but I don't know if their public will.
The
We
important
clearly
thing
have
is,
problems with it.
which is,
Well,
we're addressing it though,
That's what
we're,
it says, okay.
yeah.
so let's make sure it's clear in the recommendations.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Could I
just.
take out this after reimbursement? I don't think it belongs here.
I don't think it does any harm there.
Okay.
I'm
I
just.
take out the parentheses though.
I can make some different questions, huh?
I think everybody just finds it out.
before you move off that.
I'm just going down here to make sure that we have a note in the.
Yeah.
Add a note about communicating. The cost of the project
Versus ballot words,
versus
ballot language.
on the.
Net cost.
This is just my notes. I know what you're looking for there. Okay. Sorry, Brianna.
And I, same. Started to make my different
Can I
notes.
just ask for, or just a clarification on the first sentence of that paragraph, Bill? The
Just so you know, this is not mine.
But, a referendum for a new school on a new site was held on March 28th. The committee separated out question 1 and question 2 as they felt the townspeople would support question 1, but may not support question 2. That's not necessarily, that's conjecture. What I'd argue is that we wanted to get or at least my reasoning for doing it was to allow the townspeople the opportunity to vote for a new school without the added cost of voting.
Yeah.
It
That's
sounds
a
like
better
the
way of
separate-
wording
it.
You could say
It's-
question 2 without the additional cost.
I like that.
I'm sorry,
To.
No, that's,
Yeah.
For
to
a new project.
the option to
With
support
or without.
without the added cost of an auditorium, the additional costs of an auditorium. Something along those lines.
Good.
We can clean that up.
And then get rid of, they would support question 1, but not question 2. There you go. Glad you caught that, because it did imply
The opportunity to support a new project
Yeah.
with or
Yep.
without the additional costs of an auditorium, and then I think you're done.
Okay. Okay.
How many more do you like that?
Ralph, did you have any more on your list?
I'm sorry.
Did you have any more on your?
Oh, of course I have one.
Let's go.
I will reiterate my objection from our last meeting about the paragraph on page 17. Particularly the second, the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph down. And second paragraph down, or third paragraph down.
That was probably different now.
It might be.
It's been reworded slightly, I still object to them.
Which one are you looking at?
The committee should also address
It's this one.
clarity between individuals and the roles of members.
So I know
Requiring
this,
some agreement to be signed, that's bullshit.
so,
That's not a democracy, I'm sorry.
so I understand this is a tough spot, and maybe it shouldn't be worded, you know, it may, as I was spilling those thoughts out of my head, I may have not worded this well. And that's why I wanna work on it here. The fact of the matter is we have, I think even the Board of Ed in Willington has some sort of guidance when you get on the Board of Ed that clarifies what you do, how you represent the board, right, in public or something like that. I've never seen it, but I've heard. And it provides some clarity on your role as a member versus.
It's kind of understood that once the board makes a decision, that is the decision of the board and everybody on the board supports that decision. Am I?
That's the.
But that has to be something that's entirely voluntary on any member's part. I served 2 terms on the Board of Education. This issue came up when Dave Jordan was chair. And the same sentiment was expressed that once the majority on the Board of Ed made a decision or a policy decision that you were compelled as a board member to not disagree with that decision. Don Strickland, our attorney, then reviewed that, and it was a blatant violation of everything from the First Amendment, you know, to our town form of government. So I don't think you can do that, and I wholeheartedly agree with Ralph. You can't pre-qualify what people are gonna say or do on any committee in town.
Yes, but there are rules of engagement when you're a public official too. There are expectations.
You can't yell fire in the theater, though.
That's a rule for everybody.
I hope
That
so.
there are different, there is a certain, even if it's just a societal expectation about when you make yourself a public official, that you're gonna behave with a certain manner. And maybe it doesn't apply here. I'm just saying that there is a theory. There is a societal expectation of a certain amount of behavior becoming of an officer. We know those terms, right? And those terms exist for something. When I am, you know, if I'm engaging with the public on a topic, and I am on this committee or I'm on the board of selectmen, the public has a lot more freedom to say whatever they want. Quite honestly, the public has the freedom to lie. Lie like a rug all day long at a meeting. They have that privilege because it's their free speech. I don't get that same privilege because I have volunteered and committed to participating in this process. So somewhere, all I'm trying to wrestle with here is how we clarify that. And not inhibit anyone's freedom of speech or anything, but also expect a certain commitment to what has been committed to when you participate in this.
Instead of, what about the development and promotion of a guiding document to new and to potential SBC members, or something along those lines, rather than a required like signatory type,
Yeah,
like,
the loyalty thing seemed disturbing.
more like a
Well,
development.
unfortunately, loyalty oaths are quite popular in our representative form of
Like just
government,
a role and responsibilities guideline for SBC.
which I don't agree
What
with.
expectations may be. Sorry,
Yeah, no, I see what you're going for.
but, yeah, as a compromise, I don't know, as a middle ground.
Yeah, I think maybe taking out the thing about signing an agreement, maybe that has to be just completely removed.
It does feel like strong language to me, but.
I don't,
That's probably, at the moment I was typing it, it's probably what I was trying to spill out of my,
I'm kind of going to the part of the Collier's report where I think it wasn't just Collier's who said it, but also the
QA&M.
thank you, that they just thought it was very unusual that we were that far in the process and the committee was not on the same page, and that they had not seen that.
Well, not typical there.
Not
I think Jim
typical.
even said, and typically in his experience with other school building committees, it's unusual to see that much disagreement or discord in a committee that far into the process.
Right.
Yeah. I very much value the all of the opinions. I particularly learn a lot from the dissenting opinions. I just think somewhere along the way, there has to be some esprit de corps for the job that you have signed up to do. And you have to suck it up sometimes, because that's what you have committed to do. I have had to suck it up 1,000 times.
And I think we as a committee, kind of went along with following the path of Hall. You know what I mean? Pretty much to that place where we had to make the decision, but to that point, Hall had all the considerations that the new school did. We did an environmental study, the new school, it was at home, so that, I really feel like the committee kind of honored requests of people who wanted to study Hall.
And I think, if I could just interrupt for a second, I think that's a great example of where the dissenting opinion was valuable, because we really did sort of get off on a track early of going towards new school.
Yeah.
And the dissenting opinion on that was, wait a second, we're supposed to be looking at options.
Right.
We need to give more consideration to all school. And so that dissenting opinion was very valuable. That reminded us that we had taken a turn a little too soon.
And we as a committee followed that really.
Right, so I wouldn't ever want to stifle
Yeah.
dissenting opinion. I'm just trying to figure, like, when we get to a certain point, what is it that you commit to? What is it that you kind of have to?
So let's
Support.
carry it a bit farther, because I think a lot of this is directed at me. That's how I'm taking it,
No,
okay?
it's, yeah.
The financial analysis that I did, that was poo-pooed by a number of people, Mike, including yourself. I think that was a necessary thing for this committee to do, and no one really wanted to do that deep dive.
So in concept, you're absolutely right, and I didn't disagree with that. But the facts of the matter, which is not about dissent or consent or agreement or not, the facts of the matter were that we did not have enough facts to make the calculator make an accurate prediction. You did an amazing job building, like if the Wizard of Oz was real, not a guy behind a curtain, like you built.
Don't go at it that way.
Alright, so pick a different thing, okay? You built something that would
It was very
do amazing
reasonable,
stuff.
it was very reasonable, it was
And it was
what one would
mathematical.
do with any budget projection.
It is not what anyone has ever done. And you did something beyond what anyone has ever done in Willington. And I'm not saying that to discredit you at all, I'm saying that as a positive. But it could not be a public tool, because
I
it
didn't
was
want it to be
a
a
crystal
public tool.
ball.
I didn't want it to be a public tool.
But it
And I
became
made
a
that
public
clear.
tool because it got discussed in the meetings, that we decided not to use, and then it got discussed again and again and again, and then it got brought around town on show and tell. People took it from you and took it other places. I know, because I was some of the places where it showed up. And it was portrayed as Ralph, the SBC member who wasn't treated fairly. And that isn't an attack on you. I'm just saying that's how it was portrayed. And it was a crystal ball. It was amazing math. But it was a crystal ball because we did not have the inputs to produce accurate results. We just didn't know the information.
But it was, and Jim knows, it was capable of analyzing any scenario you.
Of course, exactly. Any scenario you could possibly apply reasonable
And it
numbers
was-
to.
it was-
Absolutely, but we are not in that world. We don't have that.
We should have.
But we
I think-
couldn't, we couldn't because we couldn't predict the cost of fire stations. We couldn't apply the cost of fire stations to
Understand
someone's
that.
tax bill when no one's approved fixing a fire station yet.
Yeah,
For the purpose of the report, I think the point is, I think this is your point in this, is that you act as a individual, but the committee moves as a committee. Whether your belief in that is that that was the right thing to share and do, but if the committee does not do that, then it doesn't get shared and it moves forward. So sometimes there's gonna be things, and I don't know if that's the point of it. Whether your discussion right now really doesn't matter whether we think it was right or wrong, what matters is how do you address something in the future, and I think that's what's in the recommendation, is that in the clarity between roles, is that there's a discussion, and sometimes, you know, I hear the word norms, and it kind of makes me gag a little bit. But is that what we're talking about, like having an understanding early on for the committee that, look, at some things you're gonna vote for are gonna die, and some things you're gonna vote for are gonna carry on. And the committee only works when everybody carries on following the vote. If people continue bringing things up, all it does is stall the work. And so if there's gonna be times where things come up and it's gonna be approved and it's just gonna go, and there's gonna be times where it's not. And I think that's every committee, because you don't work, number one, when you're not at this table, you're not technically a member of the SPC. You only do that work when you're here. I don't know, I just think that's the intent of it is.
Yeah,
Maybe take out the agreement, because some of the signed agreement, some of this is also. You know, it's. The old school backup, you know. It's escaping me, oh my gosh, must be, I need coffee. The Robert's rules, sorry, it's the old Robert's rules, like, we're gonna apply this, but we're not gonna apply this. You know, this rule says I can bring it back up next meeting, but I can't bring it back up again tonight, like, those are the things that you operate under. I don't know if that's, you know, does it?
Yeah, I'm assuming no one objects to eliminating the highlighted line, right? We can get rid of that. I wrote it, I'm happy with getting rid of it.
yeah, I think there's a supplement, you know, I think we just need to.
The bottom line though is, with any democratic process, not everyone's gonna vote for something.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And to make such a big deal out of the fact that a couple of members voted no.
That's not what I was making a big deal out of. I was not. I appreciated the no vote. What I'm making a big deal out of it is sort of a continual regurgitation of dissent. And Pete, an example for you was we repeatedly went over some financial stuff, and even in the finance subcommittee meetings, you said we have to finish getting this financial report and then get the rest of the money back to the town like we promised them. And you kept saying it in a way that was completely not true, and I corrected you meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, and it made me nuts. As you can tell tonight, it still makes me nuts that I had to keep correcting the same factual thing, that we were not closing out the books at the end of that month and returning the money to the townspeople right away, that we had to finish the committee first. And that felt like you're too smart of a guy for it to be a mistake. It felt like it was a continual effort to try to take a path that the committee didn't agree on. And I don't feel like that was appropriate as a subcommittee chairperson. I don't think that was appropriate. You make a commitment when you chair a subcommittee and you volunteer to be on the committee. And that's the kind of thing I was grinding my way through when I wrote this stuff. So maybe there's a whole better way to do it. Maybe this needs to go away. It's just that's what I'm trying to solve, because the time we're taking up on this right now is wasting all our time. And the time that the next committee takes on it hopefully won't happen.
The other thing that, I found a little disconcerting is when, after we had made the decision and we were nearing the vote, I felt like there was, and it may not even be anybody on this committee and just people in the community. There was just so much negative press against it on social media. I even think I remember other papers going out with information, disinformation, and that, I feel badly that happened, I mean, if it got to a place where people were that opposed, maybe, it's not a good time, not saying anybody necessarily was on the committee, but if anybody was on the committee, maybe it's not a good place to be if you disagree with where, get off the bus. If you don't agree where the bus is going,
I think that's what I just tried to write. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if that's what you're trying to get at. I have no idea.
The one thing that I can say is I'm thankful that I am not on Facebook. I had no part of any of those conversations, nor do I want to ever.
It was not pretty, yeah.
That's not
Anyway.
I heard about it, but I didn't participate.
We pushed it through other.
It was. But
I think it's just about working in a group, which we, as grown-ups, sometimes need to be reminded how that works, you have a job where you pretty much do things by yourself in an office or in a vehicle most of the time, maybe you are not as used to being flexible within a group, or what it means to proceed towards the common goal regardless of what you agree with or aren't sure of or disagree with along the way. So maybe just reviewing and having a group, an understanding of what it means to work in a group. I mean, respect should be number one, obviously, amongst all members, and listening to all points of view is important. I learned a lot from everyone, like I said. I'm sure that's true for all of us. And just having to be flexible, like if something didn't go my way, I had to accept that the group at large made that decision, and I had a choice to get off the bus, like Ann said, if it really was that much of a problem, and I no longer believed in the group as a whole moving together, or didn't want to move with the group, or my other choice was to remember the big picture and still work towards it, and be okay with not having what I wanted all the time, and trying to be flexible and find the good in it. That's working in a group. So I think maybe it sounds immature to say, but like.
Well, Phil wrote
Phil's saying-
I think.
I'm trying to capture what you're-
That says it.
So how about this? How about the line above it, address the clarity between individuals and the roles? How about we just get rid of that line also? And take the line that Phil just wrote and put it at the end of the next paragraph and then work from there.
Wait a minute, which one were you?
So this line
So the one
would
you
go right here.
would go there. And
I
okay, do that.
I'll do it, so it's. I'll
Try
leave it
that.
there.
We can always go
And
back.
then this would be entirely gone.
All that would go away. So we've eliminated that thought about the clarity between individuals and their roles as members.
What about that powerful methods of the current time? You're talking about social media?
No, you're going to another place. Go back.
Is that gonna?
No, just talk about what we got highlighted right now.
Okay, gotcha.
So can we just eliminate, the committee should also address that line and the yellow. If we get rid of those, the yellow lives on below.
That's what it would look like.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
explains
All right,
it.
so Ian, before we go up to the powerful social media and all that, let's stick with this paragraph because we all have thoughts rolling on it. So lack of uniform support of the charge led to confusion and distrust.
There were a number of things all through this process that I disagreed with, yet, or offered constructive criticism of. I never really fought anything on this committee. Again, I'm just speaking for myself now as far as.
No, and a lot of it's been valuable.
And that's where I come from. I don't criticize for the sake of criticizing. Except for the financial analysis.
Have we talked about that yet? Maybe we should talk about that. Okay, so looking at this paragraph now with the yellow thing at the end, what are our thoughts on this paragraph?
What category are we
I
in?
think it sums up the point.
This is not putting a specific judgment on a certain group of people.
Yeah, but what's the, at what page, what heading?
This is
It's under
under,
communications
the
section.
community involvement and communication.
Okay,
What page?
so.
Well, I don't know if it
That's-
matters for you because it,
The pages have changed a
Yeah,
lot.
but that's more about the group. However, it did cause problems probably for people watching and listening, because it was confusing.
I think this sentence about it being shared by OPM and two different architects. Yeah, atypical to have dissenting members carry their, I think it's just eliminate that.
But it's true. It's exactly 100% true that has been feedback we got.
I understand.
Okay, so why don't we wanna say it?
I'm not, it's getting, other committees behave this way, so you should behave this way too, kind of sense. There should not be a dissenting opinion.
But
I'm
there,
sorry.
but if
There will always
it's,
be.
if it's atypical, then it's worth noting, this was our experience, we had an atypical experience, so the next committee should find a better way. Maybe, it's not maybe that they shouldn't have dissent, maybe they should manage the dissent better. Maybe I
Exactly.
didn't manage the dissent properly.
You're
This,
absolutely right.
this is an observation of how things went. And it was atypical, so let's leave that information as a legacy, so that the next people can try to not have the atypical experience. And that doesn't mean that they squash dissent. It means that they realize that this could be a problem and they manage it better.
If they can,
Well,
Right.
but if we don't give them the information, then we're not giving them the chance.
I know.
When you think of our town hall meetings, you know, with the, you're talking about the distrust thing and, you know. You want, you
Right,
want to take that.
right.
Our town hall meetings have been relatively benign.
No,
compared to
but,
the past.
you know, without trying to dig up too many gravestones, because it was part of our process, we had a town meeting that adjourned to referendum that didn't go well. Okay, the lesson from that shouldn't be that we eliminate dissenting opinion. The lesson from that was we need to manage the meeting better. Maybe it's, we need to give people more time to talk, or maybe we need clarity on instructions earlier, so people know when they are. It's trying to remind me to order Mountain Dairy.
That's important.
It is.
Well, I agree with what you're
Right,
saying,
so-
I really do.
So that meeting, in my mind, is a legacy. That meeting was a lesson. We need to do a better job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say too that, I agree with Mike, it is atypical for a school building committee not to be unanimous, and it's worth noting that because as it says here, the architects were confused by it, the OPM was confused by it. But I agree with the previous statement where it says successful projects result from supportive environments. That should include consideration of the dissent,
Yes,
which I don't think always happened. There was a single-mindedness towards a new school
and
project.
that's why it's written here, because we have some history to learn from. We can pass this information forward.
I think it'd be useful to somehow say that, so that they manage dissent better the next time. Because I don't think you can eliminate it or create constraints that don't allow it.
I think that's what this paragraph is trying to say.
That's very short, I like the paragraph as it sits, quite frankly. With the edits that have been made,
You like it, Bill?
I do, I like it as you have it on screen right now, though.
And Peter, maybe as best as possible, says what you want to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Point taken, Ed.
Yeah. About.
Good additional comment.
Me?
Are we good with this?
Are we okay with this paragraph?
Yeah, Ralph, what do you think?
All over it. Thank you, appreciate that. So just carrying the thought, if you look at the one right below it, this was something that was suggested to me that a couple other towns had done, not because they had this particular experience, but because of the time and the workload on the committee. They had done two committees. They had one committee which was essentially finding the course, selecting the course, getting the taxpayers through the approval process of the course. They set the course. Moved on, because that was the idea, sharing the research, the investigation, all these things we've been talking about. The second committee was the build it committee. Their job was get out the RFPs, do all the process. They were much more towards the management of the construction and the project, getting the project done. And that allowed maybe some different interests to be involved in one versus the other. And it also allowed people to not sort of get burned out after years of working on it. And some people were on both committees because they wanted to be involved. So I just thought that maybe that was an option that could be thrown into this for the future people to look at.
So.
Maybe they don't use it.
I agree with that. I accept the point. I'm not sure whether, I guess my question with it is one option to better address the issues noted herein. Like, I'm not sure that actually addresses like some of the issues we've just discussed, like, because we never got to it. You know what I'm saying? Like the next, like, that actually addresses a future that never happened. To our degree is the reality of it, because the.
Well, although maybe some
So-
people, if the charge had only been to define and if the charge had been limited to just making the choice, then maybe different people might have been on this committee also who did not have interest or experience in construction and building it, because they wanted to be on and make the decision on what would be built.
So is it,
I don't know.
is it defining the charge then, that if, you know, like, because that's what I think that's what you're trying to get.
Well,
at.
we've talked a lot in here about, clarity on the charge too.
So-
And this, obviously, the two different committees would have different charges.
Yeah, and one is to develop a complete project that will ultimately be built, the other one is getting to what that project should be.
Well,
But we only got to that first, like, our whole role was that first part. Or the
yeah, but
committee's
our
role
charge was not, our charge was to carry it through, including building it.
Carry it through the ribbon cutting.
Right.
Yeah, and that's true, that's why I said I accept your point, I guess my concern with that is that. What issues, that wouldn't solve any of the issues that we had, it's a future consideration for, like. There might be burnout, or people may not wanna be on a 6-year, school building committee, but. It's not necessarily relevant because we didn't get to that next stage of the process, so it's hard to make a recommendation about it.
So maybe the first line could be changed a little bit, one option to, I guess really it could still address two things, it could address. Getting the people who are interested in a particular phase of the project on the committee, and it could also address clarity in the charge by doing two committees, right?
Yeah.
If you did two committees, you'd have a narrower charge for each one, and you might have different groups of people who are interested in what that charge is. Or again, some people for both. I think Pete, Ralph, and I are gonna be on both. Right.
It's very confusing, Mark, to be honest with you.
It's hard to make that
Okay.
recommendation.
But, against that is it just seems confusing. Because it seemed to me that this free group, if I can call it that you're talking about, is kind of what the Board of Ed's subcommittees did for 12 years, I think.
Yeah.
And kind of defined what they wanted, and then it comes to us, a town building committee, which is now a different animal, that has to evaluate, the project on its own. And I would not necessarily want that, a traditional Willington building committee, whether it's for a firehouse or a school or a library, you know, to be hampered necessarily. I mean, everybody,
Hampered with what?
any predefined goals, you know, they should be able to evaluate the project on its merits as a building committee.
Well, I think that would still happen in the first committee. The second committee's job would only be to execute it.
Yeah, that almost seems post-referendum to me.
Yeah. It could be post-referendum, yes.
Okay.
But their job is
I
to
didn't,
handle,
I didn't understand.
yeah, their job is to handle the sort of, the operational aspect of getting it done.
Yeah, you're right, that's.
Do you wanna move that back to page 15 under the charge, because maybe separating the charge into two separate ones, is that the same?
Okay, so maybe that could go,
Does that go there?
well, yeah, but is that in recommendations though, or?
School building committee recommendations, the charge.
Oh, yeah, okay, right. Yeah, so maybe it belongs right in the area around the charge.
Yeah,
That's
it
fine,
says
because
number-
to your point, I think you're exactly right, and what happened in this case was the Board of Ed did a lot of work preliminary.
Yeah.
But what they came up with was, what they were tasked and did was very, conceptual, right? It
Yes.
defined a square footage, it defined certain types of programs.
Less of the aspects, ultimately.
Right. Then our committee's work was to take that conceptual and start putting it into what started to look like an actual build, right? To start looking at, turning it into physical spaces. And if that still same set of steps would happen, and that first group would maybe get it through referendum, then this other group might have more people on it who have construction experience, and maybe less people who have maybe Board of Ed experience, because that part's done.
So,
Agreed,
two things with that, though, there are requirements, you know, that you're gonna have to meet on committee makeup.
Yeah.
But, separately from that, there is, while yes, that is one option, there is also something, an advantage to having a continuity. Throughout the process, whether or not somebody can be on like.
I was just offering it as an option, because some towns had done it
And
that
it's
way.
valuable, I think, to put forth as a potential option. I agree, I think it's better under the charge, but I hesitate making it a recommendation of something that has to be done.
No, just,
because I-
that's why it said one option was the first two words of the paragraph. And actually what this town did, and you know, could be a situation Willington could be in, is this town, the first committee planned 3 schools. Big town, they planned 3 schools from ed spec through the plan and through referendum with a schedule, and they didn't all happen at the same time. It was, the school group staggered to balance the text. Because it was bad.
Yeah.
And they got through that part, and then each of those 3 school projects had a building committee. When it was time for that school to go to construction, that had a building committee. So they also were dealing with a longer time span. It just seemed like it was an option that might be considered. Maybe in Willington, the building committee takes on the school and then a fire station, I don't know. Separate committees, since those things were talked about so much together towards the end.
The actual execution of a project like this requires different skill set than planning.
Right, that's the point, yes.
And getting it through referendum. I mean, obviously, particularly with the ed spec, once you get into the design and closer to construction, there may be a need to compromise on the ed spec.
Value engineering.
Yeah, value engineering, cost evaluation, you know, and that's going to happen.
Right.
So,
Alright,
some
so-
continuity between the two makes sense.
I'm just asking.
Poor Bill.
No, I'm just gonna, is that what I crossed out the line, I added the first one and it's moving to the charge? Can you confirm?
Yeah, I'm okay, well, I mean, I wrote this, of course, I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with those changes and under.
Okay.
And then moving it to the area with charge, because it does relate to charge.
These are a bit all over the place, but I can also adjust that.
Mhm.
It's not, everything doesn't necessarily fall under communication or. This was the section that was just loans, I didn't organize.
All right.
Ralph, you have other notes?
Just a comment on page 17, what was page 17, so I don't know if it still is.
What did it start with?
Under the bullet points below, despite the failed referendum, the school building committee believes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth bullet. Township should consider its land inventory and perhaps sell unneeded parcels to purchase more suitable lot for future school, especially the younger one. I think specifically mentioning the Youngerman property in that bullet is not quite right because it's utilized by Public Works now. It's utilized by the buses. So to just make that a recommendation is, or a consideration, specifically the Youngerman property shouldn't be there. However, I do think that the town should consider its land inventory if it's not currently an open space. That it is open.
Well,
space.
that, I think that
And
is,
we have to be careful there because we have very little real municipal land.
yeah, I think when you use the term consider, I think it's reasonable to expect that people who do that considering will consider that, I would hope.
I don't think we have a lot of non-open space.
Right. I'm okay myself with taking the Youngerman property out. The only reason it's mentioned in here is it has been identified now in two
I
school
understand,
building
I
committees
understand.
as a place that we're supposed to be building a school, but we should not build a school.
It clearly says it in the report now.
Yeah, we addressed it earlier. It's,
It clearly says
So
it.
take it out of here. Okay, fine.
I
We
don't,
need to get rid of that albatross
I mean,
somehow.
that was just stupid justification for buying that property in the first place.
But it's a
Brianna, you
good-
got more?
It's a
Working on
good
it.
point bringing it up that it's been used. That's
It is
significant,
being
yeah.
used. Where all the dead critters go.
Yeah,
Way up in the back.
so catches all the cars coming down the hill.
well, this is like the last page, Ralph, anything else?
He's done his notes.
You good?
Right.
Yeah, I'm working on editing this one.
Now, I have some other comments, but I think we've already beat them to death.
On page 16, that, little piece in the middle there is from the 1992 document, right?
Correct.
Yes.
That was not clear to me, maybe because I'm new, maybe because other people will be confused too. So I just would have changed, maybe, my suggestion would be, this was true in 1992 as shown below. That way people know that's where that thing came from, because when I read it first, I didn't like it. But if you don't,
As shown in the clip below. at
if
the
you
end.
do not like that, I know.
The same introduction has been used in other areas.
It
In the
was
cost-
earlier,
In the
yeah.
cost thing, it was said that way, so that, yeah, I think that's perfectly reasonable.
I'm just gonna, I'll clean it up later, but I know your point.
Okay, and then on that same page, well, it used to be right there, where it says cost of the second paragraph, this goes along with what I was saying about like many taxpayers or whatever. It says too many project and cost variables were entertained for far too long in the project development, which led to significant confusion as to the potential impact on the residents. So I would delete that sentence. And instead keep, it was clear very early on that the only practical proposal for a new K-8 school was a new building on a new site, but the process dragged on, exploring multiple options right up until a few months before the referendum, which may have caused confusion amongst townspeople. I'm dragged on. The process explored, I don't know. This can just be a fussy little thing, and if you don't want to change it, that's fine.
It does say the same thing
It
twice.
can
in
be
my opinion.
flexible.
If you take out the highlighted sentence, are you okay with that, everybody? And just leave it was clear.
I don't know if it's right to say it was clear very early on, because I think we had to do our due diligence to explore the hall school option further. And that did take a little time to explore that.
Okay, so delete the blue, change the start to, it became clear that. Does that help? That problem?
Instead of saying it was clear very early on.
It became.
It became
clear process.
And then the only thing, if you delete the blue, the only thing missing from there is that it caused a problem for,
Well, I think this is under the cost section too, so I'd argue that the cost variable is like having 15 different variations,
Yeah.
cost variables was, we're losing from that.
Okay,
Yeah, at least that's. But the process dragged on, well, right, like, there's nothing about cost, you lose any reference to the cost component. And I think what was very confusing was we had multiple different flyers with different, you know,
So-
things on it.
there are multiple options.
So scroll back to that, so I think you're onto something there, Jim, so if you still did the strikeout. And if you said it became clear that the only practical proposal,
Once it became clear that the only practical.
there you go, once it became clear. That the only practical proposal, blah, blah, blah. When you get to the comma and the but.
And I should say, you gave the rate, so.
Yeah, that's, yeah. I'll highlight it too, just make sure I edit afterwards.
Okay, so yeah, so then the but would change to, dragged on exploring multiple cost options. That way you get the word cost back.
Or
Right.
multiple options with,
Costs and options. There you go, right? Multiple
Building
Or
options,
do you wanna put options and
Project.
costs?
project options.
Yeah.
Project
okay,
options,
first
project
and then the
costs.
cost.
there are multiple costs and project options.
There you go.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, just once, read it again later, but.
Yep, I will. I know, I get the point, so.
The only thing you're missing is that
Oh.
confusion from the people, but I don't know if
Yeah.
that's.
I think,
Where the cost-
I think
that's
that
more
kind of,
communication.
and that rings throughout the report that these challenges.
Or you can just say comma causing confusion at the end of that first sentence now.
Or it's really, the cost is like the heading, right? So that's the important part.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, we got Brown.
I think those were really like my big ones, and I appreciate y'all listening openly and trying to.
And did you have any others?
No, I'm all set, thank you.
All right, Peter, do you have things that are catching your eye that you want to address?
Good at the moment.
Okay, Jim?
Scrolling. Stupid comment on the cover page. We know it's a report dated July 2023. That should be updated whenever we finally issue it.
Yeah, for sure.
Just
Yeah.
as a highlight, just so you catch it later.
Yeah,
I think we beat this one. If you go to estimated capital improvement project costs, it's on page 13 on my screen.
yeah,
There's something from that first sentence, Collier help provide a cost avoidance summary utilizing the prior report, estimating prices to 2025. And then I have it at strike the next 5 sentences, as done with the cost of, net 5 or 6 words, as done with the cost of the new building, it just doesn't. Not phrased right.
yeah, this whole thing is quirky.
Yeah, so I'd argue, I had a rough note from the old version here saying rephrase for added costs due to phasing. Repeated contracting and procurement requirements and additional escalation, so. Let me see if I can reword this sentence on the fly. Colliers help provide a cost avoidance summary utilizing the prior report, escalating prices to 2025.
Yep. Period.
Probably period, right?
Yeah,
Let that stand alone.
Or as done with the cost of new building, that's important, that it was matched, I think the period should come after new building. That's why they did that then,
yeah.
for that date.
Oh, good point. So then the rest of that sentence should go away, should the town decide to build, just get rid of that.
That's good one.
Then I think it makes more sense.
I think this doesn't say that it include at, oh no, it says it above,
It says escalation at the end, so I think it does. I think if you read it through as a continual paragraph.
It's not
now it
provided
makes
below
sense.
anymore though. It's not provided below.
Oh, because we moved that.
Assumes all projects would occur in the same time period, but.
I think I copied it over when I was trying to quickly transfer it.
Assumes that all projects. Did,
Would it help to add the cost of existing facility repair?
Okay, that's why I'm all. This changed from.
it may have,
I copied notes wrong, and, okay, so.
I didn't have time to keep.
So I struck that part, a new building period, if no, that's good, if no building project will occur, an estimate of, repair costs was provided.
There's the cost.
The cost estimate provided below, which we struck, the cost estimate assumes the whole projects will occur in the same time period and not have additional added costs due to phasing, repeated project, like, so there's more than just an escalation that is gonna impact that.
Phasing, project management.
Correct, or contracting and procurement
Okay,
requirements.
slow down, tell me what
Alright.
to the cost.
I'm gonna read it to you, and here we go. The cost estimate,
Would
sorry,
occur in the
let me-
same time period, it did not have added costs.
it did not have added costs due to phasing, comma, repeated contracting and procurement requirements,
Say that again.
repeated contracting and procurement requirements, comma, and additional escalation for further deferred projects. Is what I wrote here quickly, and we're
Well,
gonna.
we can read it once we, for further.
Deferred projects,
Deferred
period,
projects.
delete the cost escalation. What I'm trying to get at there is that
It's more than escalation.
it's
for
not
sure.
yet, like the way it was phrased, it's not just escalation, it's phasing, it's gonna have a big, multiple startup and.
The cost estimate assumes all projects would occur in the same time period and did not have added costs due to phasing, repeated contracting and procurement requirements, and additional escalation for further deferred projects.
Or.
Yeah.
I think projects deferred. Beyond the 2025.
How about we just say for deferred projects?
Yeah,
There you
that's fine. There you go.
Yeah, that makes sense, because one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about in our financial stuff too, was the, every time you do bonding, you have all these fees, and things like that, so if this happened. Like those additional fees, if it was bonded as separate projects, wouldn't have been accounted for and all that, okay.
It's multiple, phasing, there's multiple NE services, it's like,
Right.
there's added costs that are. They build up quite a bit.
I have a question. Did Colliers inflate that number from the original Fryer report?
Yes.
Or they did,
To
or
2025.
current date?
Yes.
current
And then
basis.
out to 2025.
Out to 2025.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Wasn't sure about that.
Mhm.
Yeah, good, I believe. Is the Colliers version, the only other question I had, Mike, is the version of the Colliers report we have in here, is that considered final, I believe? It was.
It's had a couple of, we've been
I
calling
haven't
it
read it
draft
again
just
since.
because we haven't, it's the same version we've been looking at for a while now. It's just draft because we haven't said to them, oh, wait, you need to fix something.
Where do you see draft?
We found a couple typos.
No, I think when Mike first sent it along, said it was a draft.
Yeah, I called it draft when I emailed it out.
So that's why I was just asking if we've seen an update. I haven't
Just
read it.
email me the typos and I can't do it in this one, and I'll just confirm with them that they're fine, that I'm changing their report.
So that finishes your notes.
That finishes my notes.
Can I reclaim my time, Mike? Of course. Just want to jump back to the charge. I really like the way Bill rewrote it, or whoever rewrote Mike, perhaps yourself. The first couple sentences, but I'm confused by the last sentence in caps.
And I gotta go back and find where you are.
I'm sorry, the charge. My
Uh,
pages are not numbered for some reason.
You might be looking at an old version.
Oh, am I?
here.
Okay.
If it's in caps, it's not.
Oh, that's gone, good, because that was really bad.
I look at the screen to see, that's what you
Yeah,
got.
that's what's there now.
yeah, take a look at that.
Of school-related town projects. Where I was going with this is I don't think it was as much, I thought the reference was to the fact that, I know we were beat up about this, we didn't understand the cost, of what would happen to the buildings after, a new school was approved. But I think the real issue for the townspeople was the context of this project in the overall fiscal picture of the town, CIP schedule, our budgets, our mill rate. I think people felt like we were just, like Phil said, we were in isolation pursuing an educational kind of, and somehow recognizing that context, and I'll rely on James to come up with better wording than me. But some having that context would, I think would have been beneficial upfront in the process. But, and I think the charge would have allowed us to do that, but we didn't.
I'm just firing, that's all I'm doing.
The other point that came about.
So hang on, can we let's just hang with this for a second, and maybe we can.
I'm gonna take out the word town, because I don't like it.
Non-related
projects.
Non-school related projects, so it's not part of this.
Is this in recommendations?
For example, the community wanted to include the cost or to consider the cost of non-school related projects. Or many words in there.
Yeah.
We'll work on that later.
Special committee to have a more comprehensive financial impact.
Of the overall.
Regarding all town projects. Potential town projects.
Sure.
I'm just firing.
Yeah.
And late.
Let's highlight, honestly.
Can I take out that's
Yeah.
just my notes,
Yeah.
this,
So maybe it's important, for example, the community wanted either to consider or consideration of the cost
Yeah.
of non-school related projects.
And
Because I think even the community at their most demanding moments knew that we couldn't have all of those costs, but they clearly wanted a better picture.
Where we
They
fit
wanted
in
one-
with the firehouse, where we
Right,
fit in
right.
with the new town office building, where did this
Right.
fit in with everything else?
Right.
I think that was highly confusing. And us saying that was not in our charge didn't help us.
No, it did not. It was true, but it was not helpful.
We could stretch the charge, you know.
do we need this? We know the community, that's why we're making the recommendation. It would have been beneficial for the community to have a more comprehensive
To
financial
consider
impact.
a more comprehensive.
Beneficial to the committee to
Consider and get rid of to have.
a more comprehensive financial impact
Yeah.
regarding all school, regarding not all, regarding the school project.
In coordination with non-school related projects. Yes.
And then that would strike this. Do you agree with that?
Yeah,
I'm good.
bam.
Two thoughts. Thought number one was it came across loud and clear that this was not a good economic time to do this. I think that was a loud cry from the public. And the other thing is, do we want to take that recommendation and move it to next steps and say that this project should be considered as part of, you know how we're doing the town assessment of all the properties? I don't know if that's moving forward, but we had talked about the town looking at all their deciding. No, not that,
No, it's
all of the
all the
towns,
town
buildings,
applications, yeah.
schools. So should
Basically,
This we
a
consider-
comprehensive capital plan.
Yes, for the town, as a school, as part of a,
Well, I think that's in what we just said, right?
okay, yeah,
But back to your other point about,
economic times.
yeah, that one is hard to wrestle with because there's never a good time to spend $62 million.
No, right, that's
That's
true,
One for a town of our size.
yeah. Okay,
Well, you're saying,
Sorry. Good.
you're right, but.
what did you say?
He said 30 million.
Oh,
yes.
30.
There's never a good time to spend either of those.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying we shouldn't consider it, I'm just saying I'm not sure how to grasp that, because the one argument is you don't want to commit to something like that when times are down and the economy's bad and inflation is high. Other people say that is exactly when you commit to it, because by the time you're paying for it, you're hopefully in a different side of the cycle.
Mhm.
It's,
Okay, that- yeah.
so I'm not sure the right way to capture, I'm not saying we shouldn't capture, I'm just not sure how to capture that.
I think that goes along with communication, and we were talking about spending more money up, to have more information to help you on the back end, it kind of goes there.
I'm gonna be honest, trying projects never cost less. And it's, like, this is where I was, people who delayed projects at the start of COVID regretted it, because they just cost more now, obviously, like it never gets cheaper, there's never a good time,
You've gotta go for it, but. Mhm.
Yeah, a project I'm working on last week just got notice. Unexpected, another 5% escalation right in the middle of. We weren't expecting anything till the end of the year, boom. Effective October 1st, 4.85% increase.
Minimum wage, yeah.
That was before the governor's announcement.
Would you like me to try and, when we get down to the feedback section, the recommendation section? I did not do a lot of sorting, and I know you moved some things up to, like, we moved an item up to the charge. I can try and go through this again and see if I wanna make sure the headings are appropriate. And because there's actually a lot under community involvement and communication, and I'm not quite sure everything that we have there. I didn't go back through that section to make sure it all applies. I can move those into other areas, or if you're fine with, I can, there might be a section of about like, land. Because there's actually some good, land comments in there that don't apply to any of the headings right now. So I can, when I go back through the kind of final edits here, I'll make sure that everything that's under each item makes sense, and if there's not one, I'll make a new one and highlight it so it's clear for you to see that.
I feel like we've made huge progress. The resort that you did today, Phil, or last night and today really started to pull this together.
Yeah.
And our work tonight, I think now I feel like we're really getting it close. So, should our plan be that you finish the cleanup still, get it out to people? And we try to meet in 2 weeks and put the final on it? Vote to approve it? Yeah. And then, if everyone's okay with that, can I move on to the next item, or do we still have stuff on this report?
Just to kind of throw it out there, October 4th is curriculum night at HMS, but it's at 6 o'clock. Curriculum night for.
Good point, yes. I have-
If we even moved up to 7, I don't know.
What time again?
It starts at 6 at Hall Memorial for
Is it staggered?
curriculum night.
I staggered, I'm not sure, am I wrong?
A different person or that.
Can I just make a suggestion based upon our current timeframe?
Yeah.
Why don't we just not meet on the 4th and just plan it for the 18th, so that way I can make the edits, I can get it out to you, the people that are not here can read it. If there's any final edits coming back one more time, I have time to make the adjustments. And maybe we can get all of our minutes done in that
I
time.
like it. I
And when
like
we
it.
walk out the door, all the minutes could be done and all of the report could be done. I don't know if we have a final financial
We're gonna
report.
talk about
tonight.
that in a minute. We'll come to that.
So that could be like the closing of the books and,
I just suggest setting, when you send out that email, whenever you get it done, just setting a date to get responses back by.
oh yeah, I will, yeah,
And, you know, ultimately
yeah,
summarize it without having
Yeah,
to say.
it'll be by the date,
Yeah.
yeah. Our intention would be to do it that night.
Would you anticipate getting this reworked before the 18th?
Right. As long as there's no pipe busting and, yeah, the beginning of school was just crazy, so, I mean, it's always busy, so.
I get it.
And a lot of it was my fault. There was a lot that.
I think we're,
The last few weeks of them.
and I don't think there's a lot, it's not gonna take me long to make the edits in here
I
now,
would
because
think
we're
so.
so much further. So I think within the next couple days, I'll be able to turn this back around and get it out,
Okay,
so that way people can go through again and see have the time to read because I know it was hard what was emailed out this afternoon and catching up to it.
but then any delays in reading it is our own fault.
So when do you want any notes by?
I mean, I'm anticipating that any notes you're gonna give me are gonna be minor. Can we
Yeah.
just agree on that? Like,
Yeah.
So, Phil, why don't,
cause I'm ready to close this book. I'm done with this.
so Phil, why don't, depending on the day you send it out, why not, when you send it out, just, we got 5 days. He sends it out, we got 5 days to get anything back to him. Does that sound good? And obviously, we're not gonna change any major contextual content stuff without it being a committee meeting. We can't do that by email. But if you see a typo or just a very minor wordsmith or whatever, go for it.
Yeah, we'll proof it again, everything like that too, but if you see something, let me know.
Okay, so are we good with item A, the draft final report?
Yes.
Okay. Final financial report. Is there anything left we anticipate needing to spend any money on? We don't have to pay any cost to distribute this. We don't have to pay for printing, any of that kind of stuff, right?
No, not that I know.
Your secretary doing our minutes, that time sheet.
Oh, that would be good catch, yeah. If she does it, that would be the
Sounds
only
like money well spent.
Yeah,
Right.
if she'll do it.
Okay. And we'll know that before the meeting on the 18th anyway.
Yeah, I'll talk to her tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then once we know that, I'll reach out to the finance office, get us a final accounting.
Mhm.
We'll make sure that anything, that all the bills were paid, accounted for on the POs. And, we'll close the POs so that returns any encumbered money back into the budget. And then we'll know exactly how many dollars are left that will get returned to the general fund.
Sounds good.
Okay, anything else on financial report? No? New business? I don't know that we have any new business, do we?
Did you see and I printed just part of it. Town of Willington Affordable Housing Plan that was approved by Planning and Zoning last night?
No.
You know, because there's some population projections in there that are interesting. As
Up or down?
well, they still have projected numbers for 2020.
Okay. Are we?
And
They're about 500 people high. Okay.
but the trend to 2040 is a decided decline. So then it's gonna be the mix of population, because I don't think the occupied homes in town are gonna change. It's,
The changing of the demographics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Report on planning and zoning, is that where it came from? Who did it come from?
yeah, it's the affordable housing plan.
Yeltsin.
Easy. You want me to email it to you? I downloaded it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Then I'll have to search for it. Thank you.
I think we already discussed future agenda, right? Future agenda is minutes, financial and final report, right?
That is the 18th, right?
That is the 18th.
Yeah. So, yes. There's no good welfare in here, but before we adjourn, I will thank again everyone for the work, even when we have our moments that are a little tough. That is probably how we end up in the end doing good work. So I appreciate it.
Butting heads can always be productive, or can often be.
Don't say always.
No, I said often,
Yes.
I corrected myself, yes.
I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Second. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous
It is 8:46.
at 8:46.